We want to welcome you all for the first in a series of town hall events being hosted by the Gallatin Valley Sentinel. My name is Erica, and I'm one of the volunteers for the Sentinel. The purpose of tonight's event is to provide you all with the opportunity to learn about what the local government study is, the ways it can change our local government, and how important of a role those elected will have in shaping the future of our local government. And of course, you get to meet the candidates as well. The Gallatin Valley Sentinel is a new nonprofit organization that was created to be a trusted and comprehensive resource on all of the issues facing our city and county today, and to facilitate conversations that are important to our community, but that don't have a platform where all voices are heard equally. We have what we believe to be the Gallatin Valley's only true free speech platform. While the Sentinel is conservative leaning, we understand and respect the need to come together and find solutions as a whole community, and to build on areas where we can agree, and to honor the absolute free speech and inclusivity in areas where we don't agree. We invite you to please go to our website, which is the www.thegvsentinel.com, and navigate our community pages to join our free speech discussion. Tonight's event is one of several unique events and discussions we plan on hosting. Our group is truly grassroots. None of our organizers have ever held office, nor have they ever been politically active before now. This event is being paid for by your neighbors right here in the Gallatin Valley. And unlike other organizations, we will not accept members or donations from outside of our community ever. We are very excited to first introduce our special guest speaker this evening, Dan Clark, Director of MSU's Local Government Center. Mr. Clark will provide us with a summary of what the government study can and cannot do. Excuse me. And provide some context of the importance of this opportunity to examine the local government, which only happens once every 10 years, so this is important. After his presentation, Mr. Clark will be available for questions, and then we will move to the candidates portion of the event. We will ask our county candidates to take the seats up front first. They will give a brief introduction of who they are and why they're involved, and then participate in a Q&A. And then we will follow the same format for the city candidates. You each have a card in front of you and pencils, and if you need one, we can get one at the front. We will collect your questions during, before the candidates take the stage. And if during the Q&A part you have a question, just raise your hand, we'll make sure to call on you. You can ask questions to the group, or you can ask specific questions to the candidates. At the conclusion of tonight's event, we welcome you all to stick around and have an informal meet and greet, and we can talk further and you can meet your candidates a bit more. Again, we thank you so much for coming to our inaugural event, and welcome you to check out our website, get involved, thegvsentinel.com, and consider volunteering with our organization and browse around the Get Involved page. We are now pleased and honored to welcome our guest speaker, Dan Clark.
So I'm going to disappoint folks because I'm going to get out and walk around. I can't talk without moving around. So I want to thank the Gallatin Valley Sentinel for organizing this. I think this is a great opportunity for all of us to come together and learn together as a community about the local government review process. And I want to thank those that have been willing to put their name forward to be candidates in the study review process. And I appreciate your willingness to contribute back to the community and help facilitate this very important conversation. Many of you may or may not know, this process is unique to Montana. There isn't another state in the country that does an annual or a bicentennial review of local government. It is not uncommon for states like Montana that they do a periodic vote on whether they want to do a constitutional convention and reevaluate the Constitution. We do that in Montana every 20 years. I think the next one is going to be in 2037. I think we just did it just a few years back. But this local government review is unique to Montana. This is a product of our 1972 Constitution. And this is a new one and I can't see it. Oh, okay, here we go. Let's see if this works. It does. So this, I don't remember what I was talking about.
1972 Constitution.
1972 Constitution, this was incorporated. And the story is that some of the delegates were hanging out, of all places, Jorgensen's in Helena, and they got chatting about, our 1889 Constitution that was adopted really wasn't a great state constitution. It had a lot of stuff in there about railroads, timber extraction, and so it was just it didn't really work well for us as a state. But and the legislature at the time during the 50s and 60s was reticent to have a constitutional convention. They weren't sure, and they kind of futzed around, and it kept coming up for a vote. They would lose by a couple votes every time. League of Women Voters really got behind this idea. Some of the larger municipalities were frustrated with what I'll call the governing shackles that were placed on them. And there's a big push in the state to have a constitutional convention. And it was a way in which the state could come together and say, how do we want to be governed moving forward? And I think with that kind of momentum and energy that was created for the Constitutional Convention, I think those delegates thought, well, why don't we do the same thing for our local governments? And so they baked into our Constitution the local government review. So that's kind of the little bit of the history. I was going to explain what we do. So I'm the director of the Local Government Center. Ta-da! And we work with local governments all over the state. So cities, counties, and special districts. So we provide training for elected officials as well as staff and all the special districts. So water, sewer, fire districts. We help them understand the governing process. So and understand Montana's law and the constitutional framework that we operate by, so that they can be more effective in delivering the services to all of us in the state. So that's the role we play. I've been there for 16 or so years. I was a consumer of the local government's center's resources. I was a mayor of a small town in Montana for a while, and so I remember coming to participate in trainings offered by the local government centers. It was my great delight when the legacy director and Jane Jelinski, some of you might know Jane Jelinski. She was the center director for a while, and then I took over for them. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we do, and I'm super looking forward to the next 2 years, because my dance card is pretty full anyway, and so adding this on top of it, but all of our staff at the center, the hundreds of us that work there, it's actually 4. We're really excited about this too. So some of you may know that we have on our website at www.msulocalgov.org, at the top of the banner there is a banner that says Montana Voter Review. You click on that and there'll be a lot of resources. So candidates, if you're looking to get additional resources, there's materials there that you can access. There are 2 webinars that we've conducted to both help the local governments as they prepare to put this on the ballot. And then after the ballot, and we then know who's participating, who's in, who's out around the state, then we did a webinar for people that are filing and running for study commissioners. So you can go on there. If you don't like what I have to say, or you really like what I have to say and you want to watch it all over again, you can go watch it's about an hour-long webinar for study commissioners. So as I mentioned in our Constitution, Article 2, so Article 2 is our Bill of Rights in our state Constitution. And Section 2, this is when I like this because it talks about how the people of the state, right? This is one of the rights that the delegates in our Constitutional Convention in 72 really thought a lot about, spent some time thinking about where is the power in our state. And then power comes from all of us as citizens. We're the ones that choose the form of government. We choose the Constitution right? We've elected people to represent our interests. They came together, they framed out a constitution, and they presented it to us as the people of Montana and said, do you want to be governed by this moving forward? And we do the same thing with our local government. We have this opportunity to say, here's how we're currently being governed in our community. Here is an alternative option for us to consider, right? End of the day, this is not something that a city council or a county commission can make a change about the structure or form of government. That comes down to the people of that jurisdiction making that choice. And a lot of that comes from and is expressed in our Constitution. So voter review, Article 9 is the section of the Constitution that deals with local government. Section 9, and as I tell you, the Jorgensen's, yeah, back to my story of Jorgensen, it's going to be like this all night. So even with slides, I'm not very focused. So they're hanging out in Jorgensen's, and literally, this is one of those things that was framed out. This was framed out on the back of a cocktail napkin. And it was brought forward and adopted and consented almost word for word what they came up in Jorgensen's. That's the lore. That's the lore. So this first paragraph of the Constitution, this deals with the 1974 Constitution. What do we do after the Constitution is adopted? How do we initiate the very first voter review? And in that case, all cities and all counties were required to participate in the local government review, and they had to place some alternative to their existing plan of government on the ballot. So everybody participated, everybody put something out there. And many municipalities placed on the ballot to disincorporate. We could be this, or we could just disincorporate, be part of the county. And I don't recall any jurisdiction taking up that challenge and disincorporating. So everyone chose either the existing form or some other alternative. So that was the start in 1974, and then thereafter is this paragraph 2. This is the one that deals with what we're going through now. So it says now, after we do that initial voter review in 74, then every 10 years, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to allow the citizens of that jurisdiction to choose whether they want to conduct a local government review or not. And so that's what we've been doing ever since. I'll show you the history of Gallatin County and Bozeman here in a few minutes. But this is the genesis. This is where it all comes from. This is what's unique. No other state does this. Yeah, we're in envy of everyone else. So the primary was so big question. So the question was, why did we hold a primary election? So the primary election was to determine whether that jurisdiction would have a local government review, and then in the interim, we would then elect the study commissioners or have them file, and then they would be elected in the November general election, and then you kick off. Yeah, that's how it does. So all of this. So now the Constitution, right? The Constitution is this big arching document that provides guidance for how government is structured and organized. It talks about rights, obligations, and duties, and restrictions, or for government. So that after that's adopted, then the legislature meets. They create the Montana Code Annotated, and I'm going to be heavy in my presentation with the Montana Code Annotated. That's the source of all this. And if you are interested in reading the law that deals with this voter review process, you can see it in Title 7, Chapter 3, Part 1, Section 71 through 93. So that's where you can go read it yourself and see what it says, and I'll have several sections of the law here. So this is the history, if you're really interested about that, how it's taken place. As I mentioned before, in 1974 to 76, every city and every county participated. They all had an existing form of government. They had to place some alternative for the voters to choose, and they had to make that choice. After that, 28 counties, 78 municipalities. You can see there's kind of a higher number of participation, higher level of participation historically, and then in 2014, and again this go round, we've kind of dropped off. And it could be that it could be a variety of things, either apathy, it could be that we're okay with how things are going, or that the energy that came from that 1972 Constitution is kind of waning as that generation is kind of passing on, and we've had so many more new people move into the state. It's just kind of new, and people aren't sure what to do with this. There seems to be a different energy this go around than 10 years ago. So neither the city nor the county opted to do it 10 years ago, and both of them chose to do it this year. Here's the history of the county. So as I mentioned, Gallatin County, their form of government is the elected county officials form. That's their original, or that's their existing form. It was placed on the ballot in 1974 to adopt a commission form and amend it. They wanted to amend the recipe or framework for the commission form of government. Now, the commission form of government, the elected county officials form of government, look very much the same. Right? But if you're going to amend the framework for the elected county officials form, you need to adopt the commission form. So, for all the county folks, we'll have more conversation about this later. It's somewhat complicated. And this is one of the challenges. It's a nuanced conversation. One of the challenges is how do we communicate that nuance to the voters so that they understand why you're asking us to change what looks like we're already doing. That makes sense. And so it's been difficult for counties to really get traction for creating change because there's a nuance to that discussion. So no proposal in 96, they proposed making these changes to their existing plan of government. So to go from the elected county officials form to adopt the commission form, and those are the binary choices. And you can see what the the votes turned out. In this case, they said we want to have our coroner appointed rather than elected. We want to have the surveyor appointed rather than elected, and we want to have our elections done by districts rather than nominated by districts. Which means if you have to live in that district and you're elected by that district. Right now, you live in a district, but the whole county elects you. These are the things, the really exciting things you'll be looking at, right? So in that case, they said, yeah, all these sub-options were adopted. All the voters said, yeah, we want those sub-options, but for whatever reason, they didn't adopt changing the form of government. And since that was not accepted, the alternative was not accepted, none of these went into place. Does that make sense? This is what makes it a little nuancy, right? So the voters, they said, yeah, we want all these changes, but they couldn't quite get over the finish line by adopting the alternative form in order to have those things happen. Because these things can't happen, all the existing things that they didn't vote for are part of the ECOF plan. Can't change that plan without adopting the alternative.
Do you think that represents
Maybe other counts.
So it looks like they wanted to make some specific changes. In order to do that, they had to change the overall structure, and they weren't willing to vote to change the overall structure, so the individual changes were not made.
Correct.
So what do they need to go back to?
Say it again. What?
Well, you said that they needed to go, that they wanted to revert back. So.
Oh, did I say that? I don't know what I said.
Oh,
no, okay. So then some of the counties didn't ask the question properly when they changed partisan to nonpartisan.
When they wrote up the.
When they wrote the ballot,
I see.
they just put on the ballot.
So they got to vote for something that wasn't there.
Yeah. So this wasn't asked of the voters, because they should have said, hey, we wanted to do commission form of government with nonpartisan elections. And if they would have said yes on that and yes to nonpartisan, it would have been great. But all they said was, we just want to go nonpartisan. They said, great, let's do that without changing the form of government. So they changed their form of government, which was inconsistent with the law. And there's no way for them to change it back, because it just, the law doesn't contemplate you not following the law. It's really frustrating, right? They always expect that we will follow the law. And if you don't follow the law, there's not a law, because we can't write all the laws like, if you don't do it this way, then this is what's going to happen. If you don't, maybe. Oh, that helps. Maybe it doesn't. We can chat more. All right, so, okay, this is the county, right? So what does the city look like? The city's a little bit, by the way, Bozeman has had the commission manager form of government since 1921. Over 100 years we've had this form of government. So that's kind of interesting. So here's our history, or the history of Bozeman, that we went into the system in 1974. Our existing form of government was the elected commission manager form of government. They proposed a charter at the time, and that failed. The next cycle, no proposal was made, which means they voted to have a study commission, but that study commission decided not to put anything on the ballot. That's what it means when it's no proposal. The next go round in 896, they proposed a charter maintaining the same structure of government, but the form was going to be a charter, so having a commission manager, and that failed. And then they did an off cycle, notice in 2000, so it was off cycle, which is an option. It's always an option that there is baked into law ways in which local governments can change in between the 10-year cycle. They just have to present it to the voters for them to vote, to vote it in. They just can't, by ordinance, make those changes. So in 2000, they adopted self-governing powers. That's the SGP. So we maintain the manager form of government. We just adopted self-governing powers. I'll explain what that means in a moment. And then in 2006, they created the charter in that study commission, and that passed. And then no review last go around. So we're still operating with the charter form of government, the manager structure, the commission manager structure. Then there's lots of words down there. But basically that, so the legislature allowed municipalities in 1917 to have a city manager. Bozeman was the first to adopt that. So we've got a long legacy of doing that. All right, so here's the focus of the study commission. This is what it's not, right? This is what the study commission is not. It's not a performance review of elected officials or performance review on staff, on boards. So it's not about people. So first thing you're going to do is you'll just wipe any personalities, any person out of your mind. It's all about positions and what do they do and what's the authority and powers that are granted to the different characters that exist within our structure of government. So not who they are, but what is the powers that are vested with them. So it's not how well they do it or how great they do it, but it's what do they do. It's not a review on the policies and ordinances, right? So if you have a policy concern or frustrated about some sort of policy, this is not a forum for that. You've got to continue to engage the political process, going to city council meetings or county commission meetings, and trying to sway the political process in your favor. This is all about the structure of government, not about the policies that government creates. You don't get a chance to review taxes, fees, or assessments. Again, that's a political conversation we have in the political arena, not in the study review. Laws regulating the election of local officials, so you can't create a new election anointment process. I just made that one. Laws requiring or regulating planning or zoning, these things are reserved for the state, but usually that's what we've seen around the state is there's a frustration that people might have, and this is a way for me then to get my frustration taken care of. I can get on the study commission, I can fix the thing that the council or the commission isn't going to do, and that's not what this process is about. And you can't direct, you can't tell the city or the county, you need to do this or do that. Any sort of function or service that, So what is it about? The purpose of the study commission is to look at the existing form of government. So if you're a newly elected study commissioner, spend some time saying, okay, who are we today? What is our existing form of government? And then what are the alternatives out there that we can choose from? So in part of the conversation with the community, as a study commission, you should be engaged in the community. So of our existing structure and plan of government, what's working well? And if you understand what the alternatives are, then you say, well, here's an alternative. Would this be better than what we're currently doing? And so that's the conversation you're having, looking at that structure. So you're looking at the existing form and power of local government, compare it to alternatives, and then you can present that to the voters. And it's a binary choice, right? We want to do this or keep with what we've got. So, what are you going to do, study commissioners? You're going to hold hearings. So there's certain public hearings are required, and then you can have community forums. You can have more than required, but there are certain ones that you're required to do. Forums, how do we engage the public? And so a lot of your time and energy is going to be spent talking amongst yourselves as a commission, thinking, well, how do we want to structure and organize our community engagement to facilitate a conversation with our respective jurisdiction about who are we today, what we've been in the past, what could we be in the future, and what would be best moving forward. And then try to frame that out in some sort of a ballot question for the public to vote on. So what that might look like, there's a variety of ways we can chat more specifically if you're interested in what some options are for engaging the public around this conversation. How do we want to be governed?
Just a question. Does the study commission have the right to word a particular ballot measure, or is that on the election stuff?
It's scripted in the law. So law gives you what the ballot language is, and then what you're going to do is put in there, something from the plan of government. So it's, if you were to put the charter in there, that's a whole other conversation, right? So we'll talk a little bit about the charter, which would be you folks and potentially you folks. All right, what's here? So this is what the law says. So 73185, this is the section for counties. So what you're going to do is look at the existing plan of government, recommend any plan of government that's authorized by law. We'll review what are those plans of government that are authorized in this section of the law. You can recommend consolidation, city-county consolidation, like Butte, Silver Bow, and Anaconda Deer Lodge. You can have that conversation. And you could submit no recommendation. Or county merger. Madison County is doing this. They're going through the voter review. Gallatin County is doing it. Your neighbors. They could, if they wanted to, vote. The study commission in Gallatin County and the study commission in Madison County could vote to say, let's join together and create a joint study commission, and let's evaluate the idea of merging. Just cause. I don't know. And so that would be the thing, right? Would that make sense to do that or not? I know Custer County has, on occasion, they have joined a city and county study commission to look at consolidating. But I don't think either one of them voted affirmatively this last go around. But they have a lot of conversations about consolidation. County study commissions may recommend service consolidation or transfer cooperation. So it could be, in some of the more rural counties and cities, what they've done is said, well, why instead of our little town having a police department and the county having a sheriff's department, why don't we consolidate into having one law enforcement department for the whole county? Right, so some of those conversations, and these are things that are recommendations, but they're not something that's going to go on a ballot. Right, that won't necessarily be on a ballot. That's not a structure of government, but it's a recommendation that then the existing like county commissioners would have, or the city council would have a year to respond to the recommendations for some other service consolidation or some other thing that doesn't fit on the ballot. It's not appropriate to go on the ballot. Did I lose you on that? Does that make sense?
So would that come up for a vote from the county commissioners?
So these recommendations about service consolidation isn't something that would go on the ballot, but it would be something you give like a report. So think about the 9/11 commission. They had a commission came together and said, here's some recommendations we think the federal government should do to protect us from another event like 9/11. And then they systematically went through that and said, okay, we make this change, we make that change, we're not going to do anything here, and they report back periodically. So it'd be a similar kind of if you can get your head wrapped around that idea, it's not unlike that.
In the study commission, instead of maybe consolidation, can they recommend maybe a government service that exists but isn't necessarily being provided by the government?
Yeah, so that could be something that could be in that recommendation thing that you say, hey, we heard a lot from the public about this thing, and it's not something we're really doing, but we could, and so we recommend you explore and study maybe taking this on in some way. Yeah, so that could be a thing that they're not obligated to, but they have a year to respond back to the public saying, hey, we heard this recommendation, and this is what we're going to do or not do, and this is why, so that would be a thing. Same thing for the cities, not dissimilar, but they do add here the option to disincorporate. Counties, we don't have that option. Counties are subdivision of state government. They exist. They can't go bankrupt. They have to exist. So now they could consolidate or they could merge together. So that's, I think, what Anaconda Deer Lodge and Silver Bow, they were both under dire financial situation, and so it made sense for them to merge together and consolidate. So at the end of the day, for both of them, no recommendation could be the result as well. That we've gone through and looked at it, and it's like, there's not much that we can do to tweak what's going on here that's going to make much of a difference. And we're not getting a lot of love from the citizens about, yeah, we want this or that. So Our recommendation is no recommendation. We're not going to put anything forward. Okay, and the same deal. They can make similar recommendations for consolidation of services or something else. All right. Cooperation, this is what I said earlier, cooperation from study commissions. You can do that if you wanted to. So it could be too that the city and the county could say, let's maybe spend a couple meetings together talking about what we're hearing between the two, because I'm sure there'll be overlap. And frankly, a lot of citizens, they don't know the difference, right? They don't know. It's great that all y'all are here, because this is a great civics lesson for you, right? To understand and learn about what's going on. But some people may not know what government is responsible for them, right? And if you live in the city, well, what's my relationship with the county? And if you live in the county, is what's Bozeman doing for me? So anyways, this might help with some of those conversations. Merger, do we want to spend much time on merging or consolidating? I'm not feeling that energy here. So it's a whole lot of language there. There's a whole section of the code, so you can read it. If you really love it, you can read these sections, but really it's complicated.
I noticed that there's a lot of areas in projected use of real estate and so forth where the county and the city already seem to have tacit agreements. And so how does that work in the scheme of things?
So with this, it may not have much effect of what you're doing. So there's a lot of interlocal agreements and other relationships that exist, and that's not part of the structure of government. We'll talk more about what that structure is, really what's in the purview of a study commission. Right? So there's a lot of things that the cities and counties do that are just the day-to-day governance, we'll just say the legislative process of ideas, create policy, implement policy, and what we're looking at with the study review process is the structure of government. Right? So I'll explain that in a minute. I don't know if that's helping.
I understand.
Good. Okay. Reading your facial expression, I was like, yeah, I don't believe you do. Go ahead.
A few pages back, you had a comment on not allowed to give any policy changes, which makes good sense. The only question I have is, what if they create a policy that changes the form of government? Where do we sit on that?
So the city or the county creates a policy that changes the form of government?
It might not be bold, it might be very subtle.
Yeah. Yeah, so then the option, so if that's the case, then you would take them to the judicial branch of government and say, hey, our interpretation of the structure of government is this. They did that, and we don't think that's consistent with the law. And then the county or the city's going to say, well, we did this because we feel we have the power to do that, and then the judge will decide, yeah. So that would be where that would be adjudicated rather than through this process, I'd imagine. Yeah, good. All right, so that, if you really love to read, that was a whole bunch of reading there. You can go look it up. We won't spend much. So really what I want to talk about is this lovely Venn diagram, the three branches of government. So that harken back to your junior high civics class, if that's still a thing anymore. But really what we're looking at through this voter review process is the relationship between these two branches of government. The judicial branch is really pretty much pulled out of your purview. The cities and counties don't have a lot of say or oversight over that. That's constitutionally it's run in a whole different section, but we have more flexibility in looking at what does our executive branch look like and what does our legislative branch look like. Now, again, junior high civics class, what does the executive branch do?
Execute the laws.
It executes the laws. The legislature creates them, right? So the policies and the laws, the things that we govern is through a legislative process where the elected commissioner facilitates a conversation within our community. They clarify what a policy proposal would be, and then they'll adopt it, and then the executive branch implements it. Okay? So that's that relationship. And so really what we're looking at is how does that function in our community? So part of the conversation is, well, what is it currently? Is it working? Is it not working? Is there ways we can make it better? And then how would we do that within the structure available to us, within the process available to us? So what we're going to look at, this is what I looked at earlier with that the code that gives you the purpose of the voter review process. So really looking at the power. What is the power of the local government? What is the form of government they operate with? And then what's their plan of government? Oh, I have handouts too. I will put them out because I will forget. That it's just a one page on both sides. It kind of explains this. And I'm sorry, it's might be a little wrinkled, but you can kind of, I think you've got 50 copies of these, so if you don't need one, you can pass it along. All right, so not to distract you with the handouts now, but now we're looking at just the power. So if you're an elected study commission, right, you get in panel, you get sworn in, you come to the training, we do cool things with you, then you go home and you say, okay, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at the powers of government. What is our existing power? Now, county side, they have a different power than the Bozeman side. Okay, so the power, you've got two options. General governing powers or self-governing powers. So that's going to be the first conversation I would say, well, if I were you, this is where I'd start. Big picture, what is our existing power? What's the alternative? And do we want to look at and consider adopting the other? Now, Bozeman, you are self-governing powers. Okay, that's your existing powers. And so then you can say, well, do we want to adopt general governing powers? That would be a conversation. If you decide, no, we're happy with what we've got, great, then you move on to what are the forms. Now, Gallatin County, you would say, well, we are general governing powers currently. Do we want to adopt self-governing powers? Is there a value or a reason why we want to do that? Okay, so what are these powers? So here's what the law says. The Constitution says there are general governing powers. So an incorporated city, town has the powers of a municipal corporation and legislative, administrative, and other powers and provided or implied by law. What that means, it's the same for counties. What that means is, we'll talk about the county. I gotta slow down so you catch up with me. You with me? Okay, so the county currently has general governing powers, which means you can only exercise power that's explicitly given to you by the legislature. So if it doesn't say in the Montana Code Annotated that you can do something, the assumption is you cannot. Right? So you can't do something that it doesn't say you can do. Now, self-governing powers, hanging out over here at the Bozeman side, because this is how you're rolling. Self-governing powers is you can exercise any power that's not prohibited by the law or the Constitution. So if it doesn't specifically say in the Montana Code Annotated, you cannot do this. This is prohibited. If it doesn't say that, it's wide open. We can step into that space and we can exercise the power and say, hey, there's an issue we have that's not prohibited for us to exercise the power, but there's an issue we have in our community that, well, we'll just step out and we'll do that. Exclusionary zoning. Can I say that? Is that okay? Exclusionary zoning was an exercise power by the city of Bozeman that the law doesn't allow you to do that. And so the city of Bozeman said, hey, this is a way in which we can deal with affordable housing. And so we created exclusionary zoning. And then what did the legislature do? Inclusionary. Inclusionary. It's been a long day. Inclusionary zoning, right? So then what did the legislature do? Then they decided, yeah, we don't like that. So they took that as a denied power. So not only can Bozeman not do it, but now every city and county in the state can't do it.
Good job.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead, Joe.
Yes, Dad, can you adopt a charter that does not contain self-governing powers?
Great question. The answer is no. So in order to, yeah, we'll get to that, that's a whole other side, but yeah, so if you want to exercise self-governing powers, you can do that. Like the city of Bozeman, you voted back in the 2000 to adopt self-governing powers. Still maintain the statutory framework of the commission manager form of government. And then 2005, or whatever it was, they then adopted a charter, which then, so yes, you can have self-governing powers without a charter, but you can't have a charter without self-governing powers. Like that. Okay. Oh, this is so exciting. All right. Yes?
Can you depend on a charter?
Yeah, I have a bunch of slides on it. I won't do that now. But yes, because I got slides that'll guide us there. Okay, good question. So this is how we graphically try to explain, as we wrestle with how do we explain the difference between general and self-governing powers. So general governing powers, so the county, this is the space that you're occupying right now. You can only do what's in that green circle. This is what the MCA gives you the authority to do. Anything out here, can't do it. Bozeman, you can do everything in the green circle, as well as everything out here, except for these things that they say you can't do. Right? So that might help in having a conversation with your community. Now, I mentioned we have 4 counties that have self-governing powers. One just adopted it last year. So who they are? Butte and Silver Bow Butte, Anaconda Deer Lodge, Fergus County, and now Petroleum County. Everybody familiar? Winnett, Montana? Petroleum County has a population of 490 people. They're about ready to go broke. They had a commission manager form of government. They'd had that since 1934. And they just don't have a big enough tax base. They said, look, we can't survive. So they said, let's merge. And let's propose merging with Fergus County. Fergus County said, we don't want you. We don't want all that going on there. Yeah. So Fergus County said nope, and so they said okay. They went to the voters and said, hey, we can't survive. We need more money. So they increased their taxes to support that, and they said this still isn't working because they have a manager, right? A manager. You know who the manager was? Their sheriff. Do you know how much he's getting paid a year to be the manager? A $2,000 stipend. So what was happening was the commissioners were picking up the slack. They were spending more time doing more things. Now the problem with that is they were doing things that were not consistent with their statutory role. They were outside of their role and scope. Now what that means for them is if they were operating within their course and scope as elected officials, doing what they were statutory supposed to be doing, and something happens and the county gets sued, the county by law has to defend them. If they operate outside of that scope of work, doing their own thing, and they get sued, by law, the county can't defend them because they're outside their course and scope. What they're finding is that in order for us to survive, we have to be out of course and scope, which that's not a good thing. So they went back to the voters and said, hey, look, we need to change our form of government, and we need to be more like all of our peers. Instead of having a commission manager form of government, we could do better as a commission form of government, which is what we're currently operating like right now. And they said, while we're doing that, why don't we create a charter, which we'll get to in a minute, and adopt self-governing powers. Had a conversation, they said, why not? And they voted it in November of last year, or October of last year for some reason. So they were the most recent county government to make a major change. And I'm hoping that's going to be, if Petroleum County can do it, why can't Gallatin County? Did that sound like I'm advocating for something? No. I've got to be neutral here. So that's what they said. Is this good? Questions? Yeah, there's that. Okay. Oh, by the way, if you Google home rule in Wikipedia, it says Montana is a home rule state. Anybody heard the term home rule? Yeah, we're not a home rule state. Regardless of what Wikipedia says, we're not a home rule state, and I'm too lazy to try to correct and get an argument with some 14-year-old kid about home rule versus who we are and try to fix that. We're a shared power state. Home rule is different than shared powers, and we're the only state in the country that has a shared rules model. We made it up, like we do most things, and we do it quite well. So we share the power with the legislature. They've given us that space to say, hey, look, you guys in the state, again, remember, section or Article 2 of our Constitution, Section 2 that talks about how yeah, that's very much an ethic that we have in Montana, that we're going to share the power. We, the people of Montana, can decide how we want to do these things. And you can decide what level of governance you want to have on you, or over you, or in your life. So we have all power except those prohibited by the legislature. So what does this mean? So what does this mean? Why would we want to have self-governing powers? Or here are some of the things that you can have if you did self-governing powers. Provide additional services not available to you by the legislature. So right now, there are certain utilities the legislature allows local governments to provide. Utilities being water, sewer, storm drain, solid waste collection. We'll say that that's it. That's all I can think of now. We have 2 municipalities right now that offer, one has a gas utility, a couple have electric utilities. And so the legislature hasn't given the authority to a local government to operate an electric utility. So those communities adopted self-governing powers, which allowed them to step into that space and say, hey, although it's not granted to us in general powers, but it's also not prohibited. So it's in that gray space where we could do this. And so they created ordinances and developed a structure. So anybody familiar with the town of Saco up on the High Line? Saco has city-owned gas wells, and they provide natural gas to their residents in Saco. Troy and I think Libby as well, both have hydroelectric turbines, and they generate electricity, and they provide electricity to their residents as another utility like water, sewer, and electricity. So they run that, and that again is not something the legislature has provided to all through general powers. It's something they had to adopt self-governing powers in order to exercise that. You can see some of these other things you can implement. Oh, local development fees. That was one that started here in the valley. Local development fees is what impact fees. We started that here with the self-governing powers. And this is one of those examples where, hey, it's working pretty good. So the legislature then took the model that we adopted here in Bozeman and made it available as part of the general governing powers of the state. So now every city and county has the ability to have, if they choose, impact fees. So that's one of those examples where the leadership for governing in the state of Montana came from local governments. Another example is this adopting of the no smoking ordinance. Public Health Department, City County Health Department in Helena, Lewis, and Clark County, they said, hey, there is an existential threat for secondhand smoke and smoking in our community, and that's causing an impact, and we have a duty to provide public health and safety and welfare. And we feel it's our responsibility to create a no smoking ordinance for the city of Helena. Now, you imagine the taverns and casino owners thought that's a great idea. They didn't. They sued them up and down and left and right. So they sued them, and it was found in the court saying, no, the city does have the authority because they have self-governing powers to step into that space and create a non-smoking ordinance. So then once that was proved and established by the judicial branch saying, yes, they could do that, then every other small or every other town that had self-governing power said, well, we'll create our own. Here's the issue. Now, Billings, their no smoking ordinance is going to look different than Helena's. And Great Falls is going to look different than Billings and Helena, right? And so everyone's doing their own unique take on that. Challenge then became, Lucky Lils is saying, hey, I've got to do a different thing with each jurisdiction and try to meet all these different standards all across the state. That's becoming a burden to us. And so that's when they petitioned the state. The legislature said, hey, can we just create one across the board for everybody? And so then the legislature stepped in and created a non-smoking Clean Air Act, the Montana Indoor Clean Air Act. And again, the leadership came from the local governments. As we established this is how we want to govern ourselves. And when it became a statewide concern, the legislature stepped in and said, okay, that's our role. We will now create that law across the state. You can see some of the others. Regulating nude dancing, that's a fun one. So, you can do that.
How about regulating plastic bags?
That, great question, Mr. Jeff. That is one of those prohibited things. And this is where it's again, the leadership coming from the people, so they've signed the petitions. I don't know if has it been ratified or it's not about, okay, so the court said, although the legislature could prohibit a local government from establishing an ordinance regulating single-use plastics, right? That's all the further they can go, but what the legislature can't regulate is the voter initiative. That's a constitutional right, and they said you can't regulate the voters. So if the people of Bozeman, we'll say, want to have that, and they took that ability to create an ordinance by the elected representatives, but the people still have the authority to do that as a grassroots effort, which we did. So and it blew my mind when that came out. I was like, oh, that makes sense.
So I have a question about that. Who will enforce that ordinance? If the city is prohibited by the legislature from enforcing a single-use plastic ordinance.
That's why we have attorneys.
Yeah, okay.
But my guess is they say, hey, well, this is a voter initiative. Yeah, that's a good question. I hadn't thought about that next step, but yeah. So they'll probably be, since it comes from the people, they'll have to step in that space. But yeah, maybe the AG will weigh in on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a similar vein of thought, then, if there were a voter initiative for inclusionary housing, would that be something that voters in
So the question is, could and is it inclusion, exclusion? What is it? I'll get it one of these days. So the question was, could we'll just say the county signs a petition saying we want to have inclusionary zoning, although it's prohibited from the county or the city from doing that by their act, right? But yes, I would imagine you could do that through the petition process. So it kind of opens up the door for the citizens to have a stronger voice if they choose. Kind of interesting. So anyway, so there's that list. Let's go on. Powers denied. Again. I love this whole idea about there are several sections in there that prohibited about amateur radio antennas. And I read this. What the heck? Like the local government can't regulate amateur radio antenna height. You can't regulate whether amateur radio is being operated in a vehicle. All these things about amateur radios. Like, does the amateur radio have such a powerful lobby that they're at the legislature making all this? But what dawned on me is, why would the state have an interest in regulating, or why would the state have an interest in local governments not regulating amateur radio behavior? Okay. Great question. Not what I was looking for, but good. I didn't think about that, but it's regulated by the feds. Another one is the ham radio is part of the public safety infrastructure. So we don't want to have that inhibited. If say all the cell phones go out, we can still communicate in an emergency. So that's where I'm thinking, the state has an interest to prohibit local governments from nickeling, we'll say nickel and dime, or every little jurisdiction you're going to go into might have a different regulation, and that's just not helpful if you're trying to maintain a statewide infrastructure. Okay, moving on. So again, the authorized tax for income, sales, goods, and all that stuff. Local option tax, not an option for you to put on in your laws regulating election of local officials, laws regulating planning and zoning. I talked about these earlier. These are all in these sections of the code if you want to go read them. Each time the legislature meets, they add 4 or 5 new things. We went for decades with like 17 things on the books. In the last 3 sessions, they've added nearly 12 new things to that. So that's what's happening. So that's, all right. Everyone understand now? Self or general, so that'd be the first thing. What are we? What's the alternative? You folks may say, hey, we're happy with self-governing powers, so we're not going to consider going back to general. You may say, hey, maybe it's an option. Let's look at that self-governing powers. Is that something we want to pursue? Which would be a whole other conversation you'd have to have with the public to say, hey, here's this thing we're asking for you to adopt. Now, the forms of government is the next thing. The commission executive, the commission manager, that would be how Bozeman is operating. Commission executive would be like Three Forks, Manhattan, Belgrade. No, not Belgrade. So Three Forks, Manhattan would be the ones we example. They have an elected mayor, they have an elected city council, the mayor acts as the chief executive, the council acts as the legislative branch. They work together to administer the affairs of the city. In the commission manager, we elect the commission, they then hire a manager based on merit, knowledge, skill, and experience. The elected county officials forum, that's the ECOF. This is, it's a statutory framework. This is what it is. This is how you operate. And in order to change any of that structure, those structural sub-options, you need to adopt the commission form of government. That's that nuancy thing I mentioned earlier. So the commission form of government, they look very much alike, but this has a lot more options and structural sub-options you can choose from. So if you wanted to just make some of those structural sub-option changes, you need to go out of here into this. The commission presiding officer, this is where you have an elected city commission or county commission. All these are available for cities and counties. So you have an elected commission, and then from that commission, the body of that commission, they elect one of their members to be the presiding officer. Does that make sense? So there's a 5-member commission, then they meet one day and say, okay, you're going to be the mayor for the next year. Okay. And you maintain and retain your legislative responsibilities and duties. Right? So during the meeting, you're like a legislator, you're conducting the meeting, you can vote, you can debate, do all the things as a legislator would. When the meeting's over, then you put your executive hat on and say, okay, now I need to implement whatever we decided in the meeting last night. 2 municipalities in the state operate that way. Any guess on who they are? So, over the hill, Virginia City, and Broadview. Broadview over in Yellowstone County, I think it's north of Billings. And then the town meeting form, which is not an option for either city or the county, because this is only available for municipalities, municipalities of less than 2,000 in population. So, not a thing. But this is the idea is, this is direct democracy. This is where the city, the legislative body is the electorate, is the town folks. They have to meet by law the first Monday of each March, and they have their town hall meeting. They elect a city manager who then, or chief executive who then carries out the day-to-day operations. We've got one in the state that operates like this. Any guess? Pinesdale, in the Bitterroot Valley. Right, so really quickly, when I talked about the structural sub-options, each one of these, if you were to have general governing powers, right, so only do the things that the law allows you to do. So if you have general governing powers and you adopt the council mayor or the commission executive form of government, they have what I call a recipe. So this long list, so see all these statutes, they have a sub-option next to it. When we talk about structural sub-options, this is what I'm referring to. So there are, like in this one, this one has 4 structural sub-options. What the legislature has done is they say, hey, if you're going to adopt this and have general governing powers, the default, your existing form of government, where you start at, is going to be this list. And that's of the 4 options, we've pre-selected for you an option. And unless the voters vote to change from 3 to 2 or 3 to 4 or 3 to 1, that's your structure. So when you look at the ECOF, the elected county officials form of government, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to have all these statutory references with a sub-option next to it. One of these sub-options is going to say partisan elections. And if you want to adopt nonpartisan, you've got to shift over to the commission form in order to access that sub-option of nonpartisan. Was that too confusing? Am I too inside baseball?
No.
I live this stuff, so I just, maybe it's too, okay. So this is how you read. So if you go to 73113, this is what it's going to look at. Then you can jump over to 73216, see sub-option 2, and that's the one we operate with. So I think I've got a slide here. Yep. So what is it? 18. So that's right here. So sub-option 2 is pre-selected. So here are your options. Selection of commission members. You can either choose to be at large, elected by districts in which a candidate must reside, in which are apportioned by population. Wards. So you divide up the town by wards. Most of our small towns, they have 4 commissioners, and they split the town in half, 2 elected from one side, 2 elected from the other side. You could do this thing, I'm not going to read it, or this one. You have those options. Go ahead.
So, at the last review, you said that they elected a bunch of sub-options, but did not switch the government. If we switch the government, do those sub-options that they previously voted in become effective?
No, so that was a one and done. And it could be that you say, hey, we want to adopt, in your case, go from elected county officials form to the commission form with just these changes. And some of them might be adopted, some of them may not. What's the one we're talking about now? County treasurer, right? So we have an elected county treasurer. It might be a discussion, well, do we need, and a lot of those line officers that we have elected, a lot of those are administrative in function. And some of the metro counties are starting to consider, okay, do we want to have the person overseeing this administrative aspect of public service in our county be an elected officer, or is it should someone that we can appoint based on merit. And as the complexity of some of the metro counties, as that increases, the willingness to find someone or the ability to find someone that has that capacity or interest. Is that making sense? I don't want to I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but that's reality. So we're saying, hey, maybe it's time to make that transition to appointment. That's just no. So those guys are one and done, and it could be that you say, hey, we want to adopt. In your case, go from elected county officials form to the commission form with just these changes, and some of them might be adopted, some of them may not. What's the one we're talking about now? County treasurer, right? So we have an elected county treasurer. It might be a discussion, well, do we need, and a lot of those line officers that we have elected, a lot of those are administrative in function. And some of the metro counties are starting to consider, okay, do we want to have the person overseeing this administrative aspect of public service in our county be an elected officer, or should it someone that we can appoint based on merit? And as the complexity of some of the metro counties, as that increases, the willingness to find someone or the ability to find someone that has that capacity or interest. Is that making sense? I don't want to I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but that's reality. So we're saying, hey, maybe it's time to make that transition to appointment. So does this make sense? So as you're rooting around in the MCA, right? So one of the first things you're going to do, I don't know what my next one is. Okay, here's a slide. This just gives you a graphic example of what the commission executive forum. Time. Am I way over? Oh, you're good. Am I way over? You okay with that? Carson's like, no, you're done, dude. Sit down. Keep yapping. All right, so this is so it could be this. If you're interested, you are commission manager form of government. You're the commission form of government, but this could be an option, right? So we have an elected. This Butte Silver Bow, Anaconda Deer Lodge operates with this structure of government. They have an elected CEO, the CEO, and who's responsible for all this, and they have an elected commission. So we have 2 counties in the state that operate this way. You have the commission manager form, which all y'all right now operate that way. In Bozeman, Gallatin County don't operate this way, but I work in other states. I was in North Carolina. They have 100 counties. All of them operate with the commission manager form of government. I was in New York earlier this week doing training for county commissioners. And they're not county commissioners. They're legislators. Albany County, population 311, 39 legislators. 39. Well, so, anyway. Yeah. I'll refrain from making comment about just the 3 we got. All right. So in this case, we have the voters. They elect the commission then appoints the manager based on merit, knowledge, skill, and experience. That manager then is responsible for the day-to-day operations. They're the chief executive. And by law, as well as in the Bozeman Charter, it says it prohibits the commission from directing staff. They have to do all their work through the manager. The manager has the discretion to how they deploy and do that work. Now, again, the commission form, the elected county officials form, so municipalities can adopt this, as well as counties can adopt the commission form, and then the ECOF is only the structure based on for the counties. So the commission, now what's interesting here is you notice one thing that we don't have? Yeah, we don't have a chief executive. So who's doing all the implementation, the execution, getting this stuff done? In this case, it's the commission. So in the commission form of government, the executive and legislative body is rolled into one governing body. They make the policy and are responsible for carrying out the policy. Now, an example of Gallatin County, they have professional staff. They then have appointed a CAO and a deputy CAO to help with the day-to-day operations of the county, which is part of the structure of government. If you read in that section, it allows them to hire what they call administrative assistant to help them with the day-to-day operations. So they are operating consistent with the law. So that could be a conversation. Well, we're kind of doing that already. We already have this professional staff that's doing a lot of the work, but they don't have any discretion. They only do what we direct them to do. So we want to make that switch and say, do we want to go to have a full-on manager? So it's an interesting conversation to have and engage the citizens about, these are the options, what it might look like. Okay, so the commission, in this case, the presiding officer is the one that appoints committees with the consent of the rest of the commission. Presiding, is anyone interested in considering this one? I'm not sure if that's, we can talk more about it, but that's kind of the structure of the commission presiding officer. Now, back to the question that was asked earlier, I think by Jeff. Can we have self-governing powers? So, the only way you can have a charter is if you adopt self-governing powers. As you saw earlier, Bozeman adopted self-governing powers and still maintained the statutory framework. Right? What the MCA said, this is how you're going to be structured based on what the law says. Does that make you? And then when you adopted the charter, you said, yeah, we're throwing all that out, we're doing our own thing. All right. So self-governing charters, what I like about this is they do not need to be approved by a legislative body. So the legislature doesn't need to approve it. The existing city council or commission, county commission doesn't need to approve it. They're on that is, you as the voters get the opportunity to adopt that. In the charter, you need to provide provisions for, the executive. What does the executive branch look like? How do we select them? Are they elected at large? Are they elected usually they're elected at large. What are their authorities? What's their powers? What's their responsibilities? Are they partisan, nonpartisan? It defines the same with the legislative branch. How many are we going to have? What's their term of office? How are we going to select them from at large or from wards? There's a variety of ways you can do that. And then administrative structure. How are we going to organize the city? And anything that you create there is going to be superior to the MCA. So what is the charter? As I said, it outlines the power, structures, duties, and limitations. It defines these two branches of government. What do we want the executive to look like and the legislative to look like? Hopefully you've had a chance to read Bozeman's city charter and review that and see what it looks like. And that would be where you'd start. Say, hey, are you saying I got 5 minutes? Or
Oh, no,
you got a question?
And I'm sort of interjecting, it might not be totally appropriate here, but is this where, does the charter determine who can vote for the city commission? Like, right now, I think it's true that you have to live within the city limits.
Oh, yeah. So you vote for those within your jurisdiction.
So how do you alter that jurisdiction? I feel like I'm in a place where I live, my kids go to school, I get all my services from Bozeman, but I can't vote in Bozeman because I'm just slightly outside this jurisdiction, but it's my city. How can that change? Like, where would that change in here?
Yeah, that would be something the legislature would have to change.
The legislature?
Yeah.
This, in the county? Or you're talking
So,
about the state?
The state legislature would have to change how we define residence. Yeah, because you can only have one residence, and so if you don't live in the city and you don't pay city taxes and you don't contribute to within the city boundaries, then you're a city resident, and then you are able to participate in how the city chooses to operate.
Yeah.
So you can be annexed. Just talk to your neighbors and say, hey, move that line out here. See how that goes
So
over.
you have to be annexed in the city, vote for the city.
Annexation into the city.
Even though the city commission makes rules that affect me because it's my only city.
Yeah, so the city commission is going to make rules. They can't make rules that are going to affect you in the county, although they may affect you as a participant in the commerce of Bozeman.
Right, because that's my only city. I only have one city where I buy everything and eat and gas and food and my kids are educated, but I don't get a say over it because my property line actually is right on the edge.
Yep.
So I'm curious, how is it that counties don't have the ability to, so I have to take that up to the state legislature?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. I don't know what you'd say.
No, I hear you, but I mean, the county residents don't, they all go to Bozeman.
Yeah.
They all have a voice.
It's cheaper, too.
So you're saying that maybe there was.
You're not contributing to all the things that are going on in the city either. All the financial commitments that the city residents are, although you participate in commerce, but you're not contributing to the financial well-being of the water, sewer, streets, transportation,
Right.
library, all those things.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. So follow the money is another way to look at it too.
And was there a change in the law for, at least at a county level for nonpartisan, offices that it didn't have to be done at the 10-year mark, it could be done anytime through a decision by the county commissioners, I think it was?
The county commissioners by ordinance can place the question on the ballot for the voters to change.
For any of the offices, or I mean, all the offices, or just the commission?
You can select them, yeah, so the law allows the city commission or the county commission, any governing body, to place by ordinance the question on the ballot to make some sort of a change, and you can do that at any time.
And it used to be, you could only consider that question every 10 years, for this, or.
Well, it's always been there, but it was this partisan, nonpartisan thing that got kind of wonky. That's the get out of jail free
They
card.
extracted that and allowed you
Yeah.
to do that.
To correct it, yeah.
Is that how Valley County went from 3 commissioners to 5 commissioners?
So they did it during the voter review process. Oh, anybody from River Valley County? Can I be careful what I say here? It's kind of funny. River Valley County had 3 county commissioners. They said, "Oh, we need to dilute that a little bit." So they went to 5 county commissioners. They said, "Well, that was even worse." So they went back to 3. This is what I say. I always like to harass Jill Cott about that.
Is there a 3-year, they have to wait 3 years from adopting a change?
Yeah, so we call it the buyer's remorse clause. If you make a change, you've got to hold on to it for 3 years before you can go back and revisit it. You gotta let it, give it a chance to take. Otherwise, we'd be in the ballot box every time. It's like, I lost it. Now I just get. Anyway, gotta let it sit for 3 years and try it out. Yeah. I'll keep going. Am I just going too long here? Then. Oh, okay. So sorry. All right, so here we go. So here's some of the things that would be considered as a written plan of government, terms of office, how you're elected, powers of the chief executive, all that spelled out. So if you're familiar with the Bozeman Charter, it spells out. Here's what the manager's responsibilities are. Here's what how we elect the commission, how we elect them, all that stuff. Any additional offices could go into the charter. Limitations for how you exercise those self-governing powers. So you could put limitations on yourself. For example, I do not recommend this. Billings, and I think Billings did this in their original charter. They were the first adopters in 1974. They adopted a charter. I think it was a negotiated agreement with the citizens, give us this authority, but they said, yeah, we'll do that, but we're going to put a cap on the number of mills you can levy. This is pre-I-105. So at the time, there's a lot of flexibility there. And they said, okay, we're putting a cap on that to 75 mills, 76 mills. So the city of Billings could only levy 76 mills as per their charter. So even that rate of inflation at 15, 10, 4, 20, those that are familiar, they couldn't add that half the rate of inflation average over 3 years. It's not an option for them. So the only way they can increase their amount of money that they are generating from taxes to deliver services is to go to the voters and ask them to raise their property tax through a mill levy increase in order to fund them. Since that time, they have now they're operating with about 176 mills. So they've added a lot of mills for public safety, fires, and fire and police, and for their library. But they've left a lot of mills on the table. And the city of Billings is a little frustrated. At least the citizens are like, we don't have, our streets aren't what we like our streets to be. Our plowing isn't, we just are frustrated. It's like, well, you've got this cap in your charter. You can change it and remove that cap, but anyway, so those are some things you can put limitations. Not a fan of that, right? There are consequences, but I think it was a negotiated agreement. They just haven't revisited over the last 60 years.
Can you put in the charter that number would be movable infringement as in the CPI?
Yeah, you could do things like that, or you can bake that in. Yeah, I think that would be something you could do. All right, so I think we've covered a lot of this stuff. Here's the map for whatever that means. It's just a lot of numbers there. But the non-charter, this is where you are non-charter. So we have 11 counties that have amended, and so they've adopted the commission form. 41 counties are still the ECOF, as in Gallatin County is one of those. So that's kind of the county makeup. This is kind of the census of the municipalities. We're not sure what to do with the Butte, Silver Bow, Anaconda, Deer Lodge. Do we count them here or we count them there? Because if we count them both, then that's double counted. And so There's actually what we call 127 municipalities in the state, but anyway, those consolidated counties can be either one. Okay, there you go. That's some questions, I guess. Or do you want to take a break? I don't know. I'm not in charge here. I just overstay my welcome. So no one's gone through an entire budget, right? And so so there, but we don't have the 6-year commitment for anyone either. So these are the things you want to have these conversations with the public, saying, okay, how do you feel about the 6-year terms? What are have we seen that as being a challenge or a frustration? And what if we went to 4? Here are some downsides of that, but then we start, and so your role is, what do you think, folks? And then we're going to try to find that balance and say, okay, it feels like you all want to go this direction, so we're going to propose that onto a ballot language.
They're also by district as well.
Yes, and so in one of those cases where they're elected by the district, not representing a district, but elected at large. That makes sense.
The ways it can change our local government and how important of a role those elected will have in shaping the future of our local government. And of course, you get to meet the candidates as well. The Gallatin Valley Sentinel is a new nonprofit organization that was created to be a trusted and comprehensive resource on all of the issues facing our city and county today, and to facilitate conversations that are important to our community, but that don't have a platform where all voices are heard equally. We have what we believe to be the Gallatin Valley's only true free speech platform. While the Sentinel is conservative leaning, we understand and respect the need to come together and find solutions as a whole community, and to build on areas where we can agree, and to honor the absolute free speech and inclusivity in areas where we don't agree. We invite you to please go to our website, which is the www.thegvsentinel.com, and navigate our community pages to join our free speech discussion. Tonight's event is one of several unique events and discussions we plan on hosting. Our group is truly grassroots. None of our organizers have ever held office, nor have they
So where we've seen a trend is in the small municipalities that have been going from the wards to the at-large, because if you have 140 people in town, split in half, so 70 people on each side, and we have a vacancy over here, we can't find anyone to run for office. But there might be someone over here, and so they're stuck. And so many of them in the last 2 cycles have been saying, hey, let's go to at-large elections because we're small. So then that introduces the conversation, okay, so now if you're bigger, right? So if you think about Billings, 100,000 people, 120,000 people in Billings, there may be different issues, concerns on the south side of Billings versus the Billings Heights, right? And so you want to have those diverse voices. Now, not to say if they had elections at large in Billings that you wouldn't naturally get that representation anyway. I don't know. But that's one of the things you can say, well, are we okay with the representation we have for people that we've been electing? Or do we want to spread that representation out? Is the city getting complicated enough that we want to have different voices from different parts of town? So those are the kind of the questions you want to have those conversations around. Good question. Yes?
I want to make sure I understand it right, that when the legislature prohibits municipalities from doing certain powers, it prohibits them from legislating those powers. But the citizens, by initiative, can do basically anything.
It still has to fit within the Constitution.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as long as it's within that framework, apparently, that seems where we could go. So, think about our medical marijuana and then recreational marijuana, assisted suicide. Those are all things that the Citizens Initiative, we brought that up. The legislature wasn't going to do it. And municipalities didn't have, it's not an authority that they have, and I don't know.
Not a good citizen petition to regulate fire.
Yeah, and I think there had been some.
Missoula tried to do it by ordinance, not by citizen.
Not by citizen petition.
I mean, there's still other constitutional limits.
Yeah, so there's certain limits within the Constitution, and then there's what the legislature does, and that's where I think the initiative, I'm not an attorney, but I think the initiative referendum part could be in that space there. If we wanted to change something in the Constitution, there's another way we go about doing that.
Right, so long as it's not unconstitutional, the citizens of the municipality can, by initiative, do pretty much anything.
What we say with, thanks for bringing that up, because it just reminded, what we say with the charter, when you create the charter has to be consistent with the Constitution. Right? It's got to be consistent with that, and then you have the flexibility inside there. Yeah. Good questions.
These are actually all questions that are written down.
Oh,
For you, so
there
you
we go. Did you have more?
covered everything. I think we're good. Thank you so much, Mr. Clark. I hope everybody memorized this. So I think we'll move on. You guys have been great about asking questions. Just to reintroduce myself to the people that trickled in, my name is Erica. I'm with the Gallatin Valley Sentinel. I'm a volunteer. I'm less nervous. I've actually worked in sales for over 20 years and been doing public speaking for a long time, but this is different. So I've been a little nervous, but I think we're doing great. If anybody does have any questions for Dan, I think we covered a lot of it. Did anybody pass any questions? Or have anything further? Okay, yeah, okay.
I want to know, did anyone ever go from self-governing back to EFOC?
Yes. I don't have my mic, but yes. Madison County. Weirdos.
Yeah, so Madison County, interesting enough, in the first voter review in 1974, 76, they adopted self-governing powers, a charter, and the commission executive form of government. Way before they were way out there. And it didn't go over very well. I think it was an idea way before its time. And within 8 years, they voted to go back to, remove the charter, went back to general governing powers, back to the commission form of government, and they have their commissioners of 4-year terms rather than 6, as is Park County, 4-year terms rather than 6. Again, there's some pros and cons to that. I won't say one's better than the other, but there's pros and cons. But if you think about it, if you have 3 commissioners, 4-year terms, every 4 years, 2 commissioners are on the ballot at the same time. So you can have turnover, which means that longevity, that institutional knowledge, which is kind of important, can be wiped out. And so it could be, and this is where we've had some counties where the county commissioner is just appointed to fill out a term, and then the 2 other commissioners were reelected. So no one had been in the office for more than a year. So no one's gone through an entire budget. Right? So but we don't have a 6-year commitment for anyone either. So these are the things you want to have these conversations with the public, saying, okay, how do you feel about the 6-year terms? What are have we seen that as being a challenge or a frustration? And what if we went to 4? Here are some downsides of that, but then we start, and so your role is, what do you think, folks? And then we're going to try to find that balance and say, okay, it feels like you all want to go this direction, so we're going to propose that onto a ballot language.
And they're also by district as well.
Yes, and so in one of those cases where they're elected by the district, not representing a district, but elected at large. That makes sense. So some have kind of changed their structure of government. They've gone from that ECOF to the commission form to do that.
Can you explain some pros and cons of electing at large versus having wards? And if it seems to operate better in big cities, or if electing at wards is actually better for small cities? Can you kind of take some ideas?
So where we've seen a trend is in the small municipalities that have been going from the wards to the at-large. Because if you have 140 people in town, split in half, so 70 people on each side, and we have a vacancy over here, we can't find anyone to run for office. But there might be someone over here. And so they're stuck. And so many of them in the last 2 cycles have been saying, hey, let's go to at-large elections because we're small enough. So then that introduces the conversation, now if you're bigger, right? So if you think about Billings, 100,000 people, 120,000 people in Billings, there may be different issues, concerns on the south side of Billings versus the Billings Heights, right? And so you want to have those diverse voices. Now, not to say that they had elections at large in Billings, that you wouldn't naturally get that representation anyway. I don't know. But that's one of the things you can say, well, are we okay with the representation we have of the people that we've been electing? Or do we want to spread that representation out? Is the city getting complicated enough that we want to have different voices from different parts of town? So those are the kind of the questions you want to have those conversations around. Good question. Yes?
I want to make sure I understand it right, that when the legislature prohibits municipalities from doing certain powers, it prohibits them from legislating those powers. But the citizens, by initiative, can do basically anything.
It still has to fit within the Constitution.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as long as it's within that framework, apparently, that seems where we could go. So, think about our medical marijuana and then recreational marijuana, assisted suicide. Those are all things that the citizens' initiative, we brought that up. The legislature wasn't going to do it. And municipalities didn't have, it's not an authority that they have, and I don't know.
Yeah, you could citizen petition to regulate firearms, for example.
Yeah, and I think there had been some.
Missoula tried to do it by ordinance, not by citizen.
Not by citizen petition.
I mean, there's still other constitutional limits.
Yeah, so there's certain limits within the Constitution, and then there's what the legislature does, and that's where I think that the initiative, and I'm not an attorney, but I think the initiative referendum part could be in that space there. If we wanted to change something in the Constitution, there's another way we go about doing that.
Right, so long as it's not unconstitutional, the citizens of the municipality can, by initiative, do pretty much everything.
Yeah. What we say with, thanks for bringing that up, because it just reminded me, what we say with the charter, when you create the charter has to be consistent with the Constitution. Right? It's got to be consistent with that, and then you have the flexibility inside there. Yeah. Good questions.
These are actually all questions that are written down.
For
you, so you
there we go. Did you have more?
covered everything. I think we're good. Thank you so much, Mr. Clark. I hope everybody memorized this. So I think we'll move on now, unless everybody needs a break. We'll just keep moving and invite the county candidates to come up. And
Can we take a break?
the bar, we'll be back in. Ready? Okay, so now we're going to ask each of you to spend a couple of minutes introducing yourselves. You can pass the mic around, and why you got involved in the study commission.
Well, I got the mic. I knew I should have sat in the back. Jeff Kraus. I got involved in the study commission. I used to be the county treasurer, so I'm one of those row officers. That believes that elected row officers are the friendly face at the courthouse that helps you navigate all of the ins and outs of state government and county government. So when you have a problem with your taxes, you can go to someone you elected that is in fact elected to represent the people. I don't hold, by the way, with something we heard from Dan. So, I'm the opposite of Dan. I believe that the elected officials serve the public, and when you get these multiple layers of bureaucracy, they end up serving the book of rules. And so I guess what I would say is 16 years on the city commission. I chose not to run for the city commission, for the city study commission, because it was only 5 years ago when I was on the study commission, and I wanted to avoid any appearance of impropriety, or I thought me studying something that I'd been involved in for 16 years was not an arm's length transaction, to use some kind of CPA language there. But when I was a county treasurer, I was a CPA, and I am an expert in local government finance, local government audits. I was the zoning commission chairman, so I know land use planning and private property rights. I was on the Montana Board of Regents and worked to get a levy, a county levy that we use to support Gallatin College. And so I think I need to stop. But I'm interested in looking at county government. It's essentially the same form of government we had in 1889. And I want to look at it from the point of view of making sure that everyone in the county is represented. Representation is very important. The rural areas, the small towns are represented. And I'm also interested in making sure that county government is transparent and accountable to the people it serves. And then I guess the last one is I look at the unanticipated problems we've had that local government is struggling to deal with, and I think one in the future, a future shock, if you will be how law enforcement and our justice system is impacted by what's out there in the future for us, and I want to pay particular attention to our law enforcement officials. And I do understand the difference between law enforcement in blue uniforms and law enforcement in brown uniforms. So I like that dichotomy, and I would support keeping it.
Thank you.
My name is Joshua Tuninga. I'm 29, so I might be the youngest one here. Father, I'm born and raised in the Valley. Was at Gateway, then went to Bozeman High for high school. Went to Montana State, got a degree. So well educated. I went through the ringer for all your math and science courses, all the way through Calc 4, statics, dynamics, the whole nine. And so I now run a company, a manufacturing company, so where it's literally my job to come up with processes, design processes, make those processes more efficient so that we can create products, and it's all custom wood garage doors, so I work with my hands too. So that's my background. And I'm just here because I want to get involved with government, and I have small children, and I don't want to run for an actual office while I have children in my house. So I think that's best for the children, and I thought this was a good way to learn about Montana government, get involved in the government, and I guess my goal with being involved is just to learn. I'm really good at learning fast. I love complicated concepts. Don't get me started on physics. We could be here for days. Physics is my dance subject, I guess. Especially theoretical. Don't get me started. And then to bring my skills at making processes more efficient and streamlining the processes to bear on structured government and see if we can do it in an intelligent manner.
Awesome, thank you.
Well, my name's Andrew Eppel, and 37-year resident of Gallatin County. My wife and I moved here in 1987 and raised a couple of kids here, both graduates of Bozeman High, and have a deep-seated interest in efficient, transparent government. I view the distribution of tax dollars as allocation of scarce resources, and I'm very interested in seeing if Gallatin County's current form of government is providing that efficient allocation of resources and transparency to its citizens, and looking at alternatives. And I view this partly as a learning experience as we will be able to explore those alternatives and learn from other communities and experts like Dan and others to determine if some changes could and should be made to Gallatin County's form of government. And I had a 31-year career as a community planner in Montana, working in Big Timber and Sweetgrass County, Livingston and Park County, Kalispell and Flathead County, and then finally landed on my dream job as Director of Planning here for what at that time was actually the Bozeman City County Planning Program, which included county jurisdiction. So I actually worked for county commissioners as well as city commissioners for about 10 years. And then we became just the City of Bozeman Planning Department, but worked closely with Gallatin County. But I mention all that in the context that I'm extremely familiar with the operations of local government. I understand how local government works. I understand how citizens react to local government, and I just have an overriding interest in making sure that we're doing the best job we possibly can do for the citizens of Bozeman. I finished by saying I'm currently on 3 county boards. I'm on the Open Lands Board for the county, which is an advisory board to the commission on how to allocate the open lands mill levy dollars that come into the county. Very rewarding. I'm also on the Consolidated Board of Adjustment for the county, so I've kind of kept my hand in the community planning field to that extent. And then I'm also a trustee on the Story and Mill Fire District. So anyway, a lot of experience and knowledge of local government function, and I think I could contribute considerably to the work of this commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Mitch Blazek. I have not ran for any office prior. I work locally for a general contractor. I'm just really interested in local government, and Montana being the only state that kind of does this really interests me, and I think it's a good way to learn things at the ground level, and being non-biased and kind of new to it, I think I could hit the ground running and kind of absorb everything like a sponge. So that's why I'm here.
Sounds good.
Hi everybody, I'm Janae Hagan, and like Mitch, this is my first time running for any kind of position. I grew up in rural North Dakota, just a few miles away from the Montana border, actually, right up in by Sheridan County and Divide County. And I grew up knowing the importance of county government, especially being a rural resident. My mom was also, she built her career at our county, serving a number of different positions, and she always encouraged me to be civically engaged. Fast forward to adulthood, and I built my career in international business. So I lived in Hong Kong for a long time, and a big part of my role in being successful and what I was doing was I couldn't make assumptions when I would land in a country that I'd never been to. I couldn't assume what the culture was. I couldn't assume business practices. I couldn't assume customer norms. But what I could do was listen. And what I could do is ask questions. And what I would bring to this commission is a deep curiosity, a willingness to ask questions. And I would really kind of maintain a sense of an unbiased approach. I'm just genuinely curious about how our form of government is and how we might be able to ensure that we're working, have the right type of government to address our growing county. And I think, yeah, I'll close with also community engagement. That was the other piece. Community engagement is going to be really important for this, to get citizens involved, and I can definitely bring that. I have a secret sauce of building community and organizing in all of the places that I've lived, and that makes me really interested in this as well, because I think having an engaged electorate is really, really important to a well-functioning local government.
Thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thanks for throwing it. Thanks for everybody being here. I'm excited to do this. My name is Bill McWilliams. I moved to Bozeman in 1979 as a 19-year-old with a duffel bag and $100 on a Greyhound, and I landed in the Bozeman hotel and walked up to MSU and found a place that I loved. And since I've been here, I've been honored to manage and run a business, and if I can make it another month, it's 15 years owning a business. And then I've also been a long-term volunteer and board member of the local Bozeman Help Center, being on the crisis line for 25 years. I retired about 5 years ago. But when I was on the crisis line, I learned a lot about communication. I learned about active listening. I learned about direct reflection. And I learned a lot about empathy, looking at other people's, feeling other people and make sure that I hear what they say. And then additionally, I've been involved in local politics for 20 years, and I've helped people get elected, and I've worked on campaigns, and I have been chair of the local Democratic Party. But let me say that it's perfectly clear. I am not interested in partisanship. I'm not interested in dividing things. I'm interested in working together, finding the best government we could possibly have that serves us in the future, and that means including everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Humbly ask your vote.
Good evening, my name is Ted Barkley. I'm going to offer up something a little different than some of the other candidates. I'm not a long-term, well, I guess I'm getting there. a long-term Gallatin Valley resident. I've only been here a little over 10 years. But prior to coming here, I got some experience that I think I could bring to the table that would be useful. I have a 37-year history of serving as city manager in 4 different states. I have a number of strengths that I could bring to the table, including the ability to synthesize the desires of a lot of different people and creating ways for input to come in so that the governance process can act consistently with what people want. I offer as evidence that in my 37 years of experience, I've probably put up about 24 or 25 different bond and mill levy issues, and I have not lost one. And it's not because I'm great, it's because of the ability to synthesize what people want. And my bottom line is figure out what people want and then give it to them. And so I would attribute that, my success to that. Most recently, I was city manager in Belgrade. We got on a little growth spurt, which you might have noticed. First year I was there, we issued 4 single-family building permits. The last 2 years I was there, we issued over 400 each year. And so we were able to navigate that pretty well and put Belgrade on a solid financial footing, tinker around with the organization so that it's effective and ready to move forward. And that's one of the reasons that I'm really interested in county government here. First of all, a long and beneficial relationship with counties through my whole career, but also Gallatin County is a county that is also growing very quickly. I think it's time to take a look and see how we are structured and our ability to listen, to be accessible, to continue to be as equitable as we can, and be effective in shaping our future. No other level of government is has more effect than local government in what this community looks like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the next generation. I'm excited to be a part of that. I do some other things too. I'm on the board of directors for the Economic Development District. I'm on the board of directors for Yellowstone Fiber. And I was just appointed to the Airport Authority. So I have been involved. I'd like to continue to be involved. This is our forever home. And I'd like to help shape it into the positive future that we would all like to see. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jackie Haynes, and I am running for this commission because I feel like my education and my work experience have brought me here. I moved to Bozeman in 2005 to attend MSU. I grew up in Missoula, but don't worry, I'm a Bobcat fan. And I ended up getting my master's degree in economics at MSU. And so I feel like that background has given me an extensive ability to analyze systems and use data to make informed decisions. And then my work experience had been in economic development for the past 10-ish years. And in that work, I have worked extensively with the federal, state, and local governments through managing different grant programs and working with the different regulations among the different departments. And so what that has led me to is really begin to believe in the power of the local government. Someone wise once said that local government is effective 80% of the time, state government is effective 50% of the time, and federal government is effective 20% of the time. And I sort of feel like that's personally true. And so I want to be involved in this because I believe that local government is powerful in affecting our everyday lives and has great potential to continue to do so. And so I really want to be able to bring my education and experience towards learning more about the local government and how we can create systems that accommodate for our growth but still preserve our loved way of life in Montana. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. And again, thanks for hosting this event tonight. My name is Don Seifert. I'm a former Gallatin County Commissioner. I served on various boards before I was elected, the planning board, board of adjustments, capital improvement committee, that type of thing. One thing I learned as a county commissioner is that the best government is the government that's closest to the people. One of the things I truly believe is that local government is the government that touches people every day. And it's important that we do that in a meaningful manner, in a respectful manner, and that we take the concerns of the citizens to heart every day. I feel that I was commissioner when Gallatin County went through this tremendous growth period that we've had in the last few years. And I really believe that it's time to take a look at our local government and review it and see how we can best be more efficient and more transparent in what local government does and how to be respectful of the wishes of our local citizens, or local residents. And so the reason I applied was I felt that I could take my experience with local government, do an honest and thorough, unbiased review of what we have now, see where the bottlenecks are to the service of the people, and then figure out if there's a way that we can eliminate those bottlenecks and be more effective in how we do that. And so, in a nutshell, that's it. And if you have any questions at any point, please feel free to get hold of me. Thank you.
Thank you.
So much, Dan, for the great presentation tonight. It was really outstanding. My name is Steve White, and I'm a longtime resident of Gallatin County. And back in 1866, my great-grandfather, Stephen White, came into this valley in a covered wagon. And presently, I live on our family farm ranch that is west of Bozeman. We've owned the land and farmed it since 1899. And I'm proud of that place. And after graduating from MSU in 1974, I took a job at DNRC as a geohydrologist. And then after that, I started a software business that was located here for 30 years. And while I was doing software, for 10 years of that, I was a volunteer citizen on various county boards and committees. And one was the Board of Adjustments, which is a real important board. Then in 2006, I ran for Gallatin County Commission, and I served 2 terms, 2007 through 2018 as a Gallatin County Commission. I served with Don for some of the years that I was there. Several years after I ended my time at the County Commission, I served a couple of years on the local Gallatin Conservation District. And for the last 10 years, I've been a member of the Gallatin College Advisory Committee. And that's been a great experience with that growing college. Back in the 90s, they did have a study commission here in Gallatin County. And as a citizen, I came to a lot of meetings, and I was sitting out in the audience. And it's an amazing experience to go through all that they went through. I'm running because I believe that I can provide the experience and expertise that I've developed in county government to benefit the study of our form of government. I really am running with no agenda. The county citizens voted to study our form of government for Gallatin County. And it's my interest that my focus would be on citizen transparency and engagement. And I would just simply be ready to hear from the public. And because they voted for this, and there may be some really good reasons why they want to consider some changes. And what Dan did tonight, I'm hoping a lot of citizens across the county will review that and watch that and go through the slides, because this is not a real easy thing, but there's some things you can do and some things you can't do, and everything's connected to the Constitution and Article 11 and also Title 7 and Montana Code. So I really appreciate the opportunity to run for this office, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Dan, for a wonderful presentation. I could have listened longer, but yeah, your book can only take so much, you know. Anyway, my name is Klaus Tuniga. I moved here in 1964. Found a girl from Montana. She had a bright smile. Good swing in the skirt, too. Anyway, I came out here the first 9 years. I was involved in the agricultural field. And then I got involved in the insurance business, and I've been in that for over 50 years. Gives you a little bit of a clue. Like I said, I came here in '64. That's 60 years ago. So, I raised my family here. Josh is my grandson. He's kind of ornery, you know, but he's kind of smart too. You got to watch the smart stuff. Anyway, I went through all that, and when I was in college, my major, which I didn't quite finish, was political science. I didn't finish because I chased this girl to Montana. And since then, I've been involved in the political field. I started in '86. I was thinking of running for the Senate, and a friend of mine jumped in, and I said, no, I'm not going to bump heads with you. You go for it, and I'll help you. I helped him get elected. '88, I helped Shelley. Back then it was Cheney, but now it's Vance. I helped her get elected. She won more than anybody else in the county. And I managed 6 different campaigns over the next few years. After that, I was involved with I was treasurer for Human Resource Development Council for 5 years. Then I got involved with the Governor's Employment and Training Council for a few more years. And then after that is when I got involved in this. And then I made a bet with Sam Hoffman that if he would run for the study commission in 1995, I would run too. So we both did. We got on there, and I happened to serve with Steve's dad. It was a great commission. We learned a lot, and I would really like to get back in. I think there's more things that can be done and more things that we got to learn about, and we got to present this thing in a way that benefits Gallatin County. I've raised my family here. I wanted to be here for a long time, and I think if we get involved in this, it'll really go well. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Bob Webster. I'm a software engineer. I'm not political. I haven't run for office before. I've been in the technology industry for a long time. I'd like to think that I can process things and be logical. I'm hoping that I can bring some of that to this the committee. Obviously, there's some people here who are extremely smart in the realm of politics and government, and it's awesome to listen to them talk about this. I think it would be a great experience to be part of that. I hope that my engineering skills, as far as process, logically going through steps and analyzing things, would help the committee. Hopefully a different perspective from a non-politician to provide some insight. One of the things as an engineer that I'm kind of proud of is the answer, if somebody answers a question, because that's the way it's done, excuse me, never sits well with me. I always like asking questions. I always like to know why, always probing deeper. And in fact, it helps me learn. I think another part of this that I'm really interested in is getting out into the community and hopefully talking to citizens and getting them to react the same way. If somebody says it needs to be done this way because that's the way it's done, they ask why, and they kind of probe them and make the residents really understand the process, the government, the options, and make sure they are well informed. Finally, the last part of it, I understand one of the committees did all this work, put something on the ballot, and it didn't get voted in, it got denied. I hope that through this process, we do it right, and whatever we come up with is what the voters want, so that the time spent generating, if there is a change, that it is what the residents want and they will vote it in. I think that's of most importance, to not waste our time and to really understand what it is. So that's it.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll keep the mic over there. You guys have done a fantastic job of answering a lot of the questions that we had pre-prepared. I'll open it up to the audience. Does anybody have a specific question for the group or for anybody individually? You can just raise your hand. I don't know if you have cards filled out. No? Okay, I'll keep it moving along. I'm gonna pick one question from our list, and this is to the group, and you guys can answer as you wish. Whose voices do you think are absent from current government today?
About 90% of everybody's. So the answer to the question is about 90% of everybody's right now, and I think there's lots of room to improve that, especially with technology that we haven't fully utilized at this point in time. It never ceased to amaze me during my career, the people who would come in and talk about issues in their neighborhoods or issues in the community who actually had no earthly idea how your local government works and the avenues that you have to pursue your interests and resolve any issues that you have. So I think the bottom line is we need to do an awful lot better job of integrating people in the processes of their own local government, and I stick to my answer, about 90%.
While I was a commissioner, and I think Don experienced the same thing, we would have some pretty important things on the table, and one was the budget, millions and millions of dollars. We would have budget hearings, and really there was no one in the public in the room. It was a lot of departments and maybe some groups and such. But I really hope that with this study commission that it's framed well, that it'll cause for people to have interest and come and be engaged, because who's ever elected, that this commission really wants to hear from the public, because there's a reason that they voted for it, because often they don't vote for this, as most counties don't, and this time they voted for it for the city and for the county, but they also turned it down, I believe, for Three Forks and for Belgrade and West Yellowstone. From what and Dan would know better, but West Yellowstone's down there with 3 members that they need for the study commission and only 2 filed for the office. So there's 2 people that are going to do all the heavy lifting. And I'm just hoping that the city of Bozeman will be involved with that study commission, and city of Bozeman, city of Belgrade, and others, and in the rural sections will come to the county side of it as well. And that they'll take time to understand what's on the plate, because this only happens every 10 years if it's approved by the voters. And in this case, it's been approved by the voters, and we've got 12 months to do some work, and I'm just hoping that there will be, more than 10% of the people that there's some interest. So.
Anybody else?
I would agree with both Steve and Ted. And that's one of the important parts of this commission, is the outreach and to draw those people into the conversation so that we can hear everybody's voices, to move the commission around to other communities. Gallatin County is really unique. We've got 5 incorporated cities, in Gallatin County, which is the largest number of any county in the state. We're at about 130,000 people, whatever that number is now, is changing so rapidly, as well as about 10% additional to that, because we've got that many more people in the county that are visiting or traveling through, or Big Sky or wherever else that are visiting. So we have to figure out how to do that and how to make sure that the residents' needs are heard and make sure that we do that in a thoughtful and thorough manner.
I think the voices that are absent are the uninformed. My mantra is problem well defined is a problem half solved. So I think that this would be the place for the commission to definitely define the things to convey to the uninformed, so they have the proper choices in front of them to make that choice.
I introduced myself to 2 very nice women whose name escaped me, and one of them said, I go to the commission and I feel like it's a foregone conclusion and I feel left out of the process. And I think a lot of people feel left out of the process. I think rural folks feel out of the process. I think the low-income people feel out of the process. I don't think people feel like their voice is being heard. So let's really work hard on being considerate and thoughtful and bringing more people in to have process and structure that's going to make us much more successful, particularly in the education part. I think that's really important.
Okay, go ahead.
So, representative government, it's there when you need it. And a lot of times, maybe we need it more than we think. When I was on the City Study Commission 1994-96, we did believe that there was large underrepresented groups in the city, and we designed a charter that had wards, that had a directly elected mayor, that actually had a referendum on the city manager every 3 years that would maybe have avoided some of the things we went through this past year. But we did surveys, we held multiple meetings, we met with Klaas and Sam and Ray and all of the county study people many times to try to bring in the rest of the rest of the public. It's difficult, and I hope that experience that I went through. I was also the liaison on the 04-06, the charter that got passed. I think that you have to be very aggressive. You have to spend money. You have to figure out how to do one of those surveys that actually makes statistical sense. And I think it's weird, but the west half of the city is probably not represented very well by the city commission, and it's probably not represented very well by the county commission. And then I think the rural and western part of and even the southern part, go all the way to West Yellowstone. The northern part, we all go all the way to Sedan, I think. All of that rural area, I don't think they're involved at all. I remember somebody from Willow Creek telling me, I just hope you put a fence around Bozeman that doesn't let those people out. And that was in 94 and 96, and I don't know if that's changed at all. But I think that we're going to have to have people that want to be very aggressive in finding people who don't feel represented and putting their voices into our process so that we can get something out there. Who knows what we'll come up with, but I believe we do have major deficits geographically, probably economically, certainly. That is a thing that this commission can address. I don't know how much the structure can do, but I think it can do some. And as I said before, I think representation and transparency, accountability, those are the things we can come up with to involve more people in our processes. Because as Steve said, nobody shows up on budget night.
All right, go ahead.
I think it's the younger voters. The under 35 group seems to be heavily underrepresented in all levels of government, just not the local government, or not just the local government, but in all forms. You get some that are captivated by the concepts that take on, but a majority are trying to build their lives and trying to ignore the government. And you know, it's a government for the people, by the people, and if you build, like, the government is the system that we're setting up that oversees a lot of this, and so the younger people trying to build their lives should have a say in that.
Just super quick, I want to say that I think it's really important that we recognize and that we advance the notion that residents of the city of Bozeman and the city of Belgrade and the city of are county residents also. I think county government tends to focus a little bit more on the rural issues, and I understand roads and bridges and rural issues and agricultural community, but I know a lot of people in the city of Bozeman, for instance, who don't really recognize that they are also residents of Gallatin County, and so they choose not to participate. I'd like to see that group represented more.
Great.
I just would like to say that I agree with actually a lot of the candidates. I think 90% of people aren't engaged in local government, and I think it's because they just don't know how. I see a lot of my peers that are younger in my generation feel passionate about issues but not know how to engage, and so I think a big part of our task is education and listening and hearing from other people, and so I just wanted to say that I actually agree with a lot of the candidates.
I picked a good question.
Hello, I was just gonna say that I sat on the Government Study Commission in 94 to 96, and we hit all the cities to get them involved. And right now, I think the county's probably almost double what it was then. And we're gonna have to do just more than hit West Yellowstone, Belgrade, Manhattan, and Three Forks and Bozeman, because you've got different counties or sections that are really growing. You got Big Sky down there, you got Gateway, you got Four Corners, not to mention other things up further north. So I think this is a real challenge for us to get these people involved and inform them. We have to remember politics is local. I know we all get excited about Washington, D.C. That isn't where it's at. It's in your local political parties and in study commissions like this. Thank you.
I also agree with a lot of what's been shared up here, and I want to add that something that really excites me about this commission is that in 1994, there were fewer ways of facilitating conversation than there are now. We have a lot of creative ways that we can tap into reaching out to the community, and like Dan said at the beginning of his presentation, Montana is the only state that offers something like this, and we have a lot of people who have recently moved here from all over, and this commission, both the county and the city, is a real opportunity to actually hopefully generate more broad-based interest in how both the city and the county government function. And I hope that as a commission, we have a chance to really show some more creative, engaging ways to make sure that all generations are represented and to make sure that our rural residents are as represented as people struggling to find an affordable place to live in Bozeman.
Great. I think you guys have given very thoughtful answers, and thank you so much. We'll wrap up this portion and do the exact same thing for the city candidates. Thank you so much. We ready? Okay, so we're gonna just introduce yourselves for a couple of minutes and let us know why you got involved.
My name is Deanna Campbell. I've lived in Bozeman for 37 years. I'm part of the University Neighborhood Association. And I'm a business owner. So I've had a lot of opportunity to interact with the city commission, city staff, focus groups, advisory boards. And I've learned over the years that sometimes our bureaucratic structure works for us, but many times it does not. And I look forward to the work of the study commission to determine if there are changes that we could consider that would give us a city government that is more representative of the people that it serves, and also a form and structure that would provide, and charter, that would provide for more responsiveness to the needs and values of the local people. So I'm semi-retired, so I have the time and to devote to this study, and I would certainly appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to the Gallatin Valley Sentinel for doing this. These votes are going to be at the back of the ballot, and when you pick 7 people from 20 and 5 from 15, the more that we can get out the word on this from all of us and all of you out there, the more important that will be, so that people make decisions that are thoughtful. So this is really important that you're doing this. My name is Carson Taylor. My experience that leads me here is I've been a mediator and facilitator of public policy discussions for 30 years. And about 20 years ago, I got involved in local electoral politics. I was on the school board for 8 years, and I was on the city commission for 8 years, and that ended when I retired in 2018. So since then, I've had a chance to think about public input, representation, both of which I think are issues that are in front of us that we've got to figure out how to do better than we have done. And then I'll add transparency to that. Those 3 issues, and I'm sure that when we get into this, if I get elected and or the people that do get elected, when we start talking to people in the city of Bozeman, we'll get a better idea of what they perceive other problems are in the interchange between people and government, community, and officials in the government. And I think that's really important. I've spent a good bit of time contemplating my past with the city and with the school board. What did I do right? None of us are perfect. I made mistakes along the way. And I think there are better ways to encourage communication and engagement than what we've done. And we need to look at what those are and move forward with them. As a mediator, and I taught mediation for years, the skills that are involved in active listening, reflective listening, really figuring out, I like to say this, there's hearing, there's listening, and there's understanding. And when someone's in front of me, or when I'm talking to someone, the best way to understand them is some form of a dialogue. We don't really have that. When you have a big issue in front of the city commission, 30, 50 people come up, they get 3 minutes, they talk. There is no real dialogue that goes on, and I think we need to find better ways to do that. I'm hoping that the city commission, city study commission that gets elected represents a broad spectrum of lived experiences within the city. I would hate it if everybody was my age that got elected. I think that would be a big mistake. We can share a lot if we're different from one another, if we have different lived experiences. So I'm hoping that when those of you that are voting are looking at who you're voting for, think of a broad spectrum, a way to look at the slate in a broader way than just this perspective or that perspective. And I think that applies politically as well. I do think there will be an interesting interplay between the County Study Commission and the City Study Commission. And so there ought to be a little bit of communication so that we each know what we're doing along the way, and maybe it will matter and maybe it won't matter, but we should be paying attention to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Spencer. I'm one of those weird people that was actually born in Bozeman, at the old Bozeman Deaconess, that was in the North Historic District before they moved it up to the hill. I was really excited about getting involved in this because I think it's important to create a great future for the kids that people are raising in this community. I have one of them. I currently serve on the Parent Advisory Council at her school. I'm also the Project Connect liaison for her school to try and get other volunteers on the playground to interact with kids. And, you know, let them know that even though it may be the worst day of their lives, you're just small, we can fix it with a tissue and a Band-Aid, and you can go about your day and we'll have a better one tomorrow. I also work as a family nurse practitioner in an acute care setting, so I constantly see people sometimes on the worst days of their life, and I try and serve this community to make it a better one, and I want to do that at the city level as well. I'm sure if any of you watch the city commission meetings or attend any of them, you've probably seen me fuss at the city commissioners from time to time about various things. I always try to approach things with being generally considerate of all variables and sides. I want people to feel like they can talk to me, even if we don't agree with the road of how to get somewhere. Oftentimes, on the political chasms that we have today, we often all want the same results. It's just a matter of the road that we take to get there. And I want to know what different roads people have to, you know, make some positive changes in this community. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Barrett McQueston. I'm a special education paraprofessional in the Life Skills Department at Emily Dickinson. I have been a substitute teacher and a kitchen manager, and I have been a renter here in Bozeman for the last 10 years. The reason that I am running for the City Charter Study Commission is because I am really excited about this uniquely democratic process that is offered by the Montana Constitution, because it guarantees an opportunity to make every single voice in Bozeman heard. I specialize in absorbing information, understanding it, and making sure that the people around me understand it as well. I am, after all, an educator. My goal in this race is to communicate with the people of Bozeman over the 2-year process to make sure the changes my fellow study commissioners and I recommend will benefit the people that live and work here. It is clear that change is needed. The voters of Bozeman decided that back in June. I want to make sure that we actually get those changes made and that we're not just kicking the can down the road another 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
First, I'd like to thank the Gallatin Valley Sentinel and Dan Clark for a phenomenal presentation and for putting on this evening's forum. My name is Roger Blank, and I'm an attorney by trade, and I've been appointed a public official in my capacity as an attorney, and I'm a former assistant district attorney, and I was also a former special prosecutor where I prosecuted government officials for violations of the law. I had a prior unsuccessful run for city commissioner. Although I was unsuccessful in that venture, it still has left me with the desire to improve upon the Bozeman city government. I believe the voters, it's clear from the voters, that there has to be more responsiveness and accountability coming from our government, both on the county and on the city level. One of the policies I advocate for is the at-large versus the ward form of elections. I think we need to go to a ward form of elections because I'm from Northwest Bozeman, and I can tell you for myself, my neighbors, we don't feel that we are appropriately listened to and represented in the current city commission as it is formed right now. And I look at this as an opportunity to structure our form of government to remedy the deficits that currently exist in why the people from my area, for example, do not feel that they're adequately represented. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Becky Franks, and I moved here 20 years ago. I raised my boys here, and now I'm raising my grandkids. And I've been involved in government, working for government in the beginning of my career, and then being CEO of a nonprofit for the last 18 years. And during that time, have been involved in the writing of bylaws and changing of laws and reading the MCA and really thinking about how does the structure of the organization function so that it can function well. I served on a county board and chaired that board for a while, and then also currently on the board for the Bozeman Health as the vice chair. So my geek special power is to really think about how things function. If we don't have the government set up in a way where you can make decisions, then it makes it hard to be able to make good decisions. And so really looking at the waterfall of information, how it comes from the top down, how it comes from the bottom up. One of the things that we definitely need to do is listen to the people, but we also need to talk to the employees of the city. You know, how are they being represented in their work? Is there accountability all the way through? Is there a form of flow of information that is effective so that people can make decisions and really know what's going on? There's a big budget for the city. How's that money being spent? Is there accountability going both up and down? How's the information flow? And so when this the study commission came through and got voted on, I was looking at it and I thought, I think I've got something to offer just because I think that way. And I think that we can really review it. I'm very interested in getting information about what we think is going on now, and also leaning into Dan and his team and saying, okay, what do great cities look like? What are the benefits of the different types of city government, so that we can lean into that and say, okay, let's really examine all the opportunities before we make decisions. So if I can be of service, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is McCall Roach. I'm 33, and I do want to say thank you also for hosting us, and thank you everybody for coming. So yeah, I'm 33. I've went to college here, moved here for college, started business. Basically, feel like I became an adult when I came to Bozeman, and so it's been exciting to see the growth and see the changes. My current profession, I am a realtor, everybody's favorite job, and I, on a day-to-day basis, and week to week, I get to deal with local government. I am the chair of our government affairs committee, as well as being on the board of directors for our local association. And my reason for running is I think this is an exceptionally exciting opportunity that we have here, that we have the chance to hold our government accountable and to analyze and evaluate the efficiencies and inefficiencies in it, and then recommend something to do about it. I come into this with no preconceived notion of what that may look like. It's entirely possible that we may find that the current form of government is the best way that we have to represent our local municipality. But I come at this with genuine passion and want to use this as an opportunity to critically analyze what our government is and what it can do for us and how it can best serve our community. Want to make sure that we have no people that are left unrepresented, and that we can operate as efficiently as possible. Would appreciate any votes, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I just want to thank the Gallatin Valley Sentinel and all of you for coming out today. It's very important. My name is Harrison Howarth. I'm 27 years old. Might be the youngest, not sure. So I do a lot of political work, political volunteer work here in Bozeman and in the Gallatin Valley at the grassroots level. So this puts me into contact with a lot of voters. So I speak with many voters in the city and in the county. And so this kind of led me to this path, and I saw this as an opportunity to serve the community that I love so much here, to bring a voice for these people who I have conversations with, and to really bring transparency. And I think that this would be a great opportunity to do all that.
Thank you.
My name is Barb Sestero, and I will add my thanks to the Gallatin Valley Sentinel and everybody in the room for sticking it out on a Friday night to meet all of us.
You stole my line.
Sorry. I've been in Montana for 30 years, 26 of those here in Bozeman. My career I've spent in nonprofit land conservation and natural resource management. So in that capacity, I've interacted with local, state, and federal government, both the executive branch and the legislative branch, trying to participate and influence decisions. I'm also a trained facilitator with a little over 20 years of experience bringing folks with diverse perspectives together in a variety of collaborative problem-solving processes. And I am a self-professed democracy nerd with a genuine curiosity in how our system of government functions and operates. So when I saw this opportunity, I figured, well, it's time to put my money where my mouth is and participate. And I'm really looking forward to working on ensuring that we have good, effective governance in the city of Bozeman, and really digging into how our local government is currently functioning, what's working, what's not working, what might be tweaked and improved to ensure we get that good, effective governance. And then my other hope is that this local government study, both the city and the county, can be transparent and can increase all of our understanding and awareness of how local government functions and how we can participate as citizens so that we get the communities that we want and deserve here in the Gallatin Valley. So again, Barb Sestero, and I look forward to working with everybody if I am elected to this position.
Thank you.
Hello everybody, I'm Wiley Phillips. I graduated from, well actually, I guess since we're doing a race to the bottom on age, I'm 24. I think I won on the youngest person up here. So that's awesome. But I graduated from MSU with a degree in economics, and I was lucky enough to get right into economic development right after graduation. So I've been doing that for the past 2 years. I represent the Northern Rocky Mountain Economic Development District, which is the local EDD for Gallatin and Park counties. Through that experience, I've been very lucky to deal with government at the federal level, the state level, and the local level. And so far, my favorite has been the local level. When I heard about this opportunity to assess and analyze how our local government is ran and maybe how we can make it better, which is what economics is all about, I was all for it. So I thought I'd put my name in the hat and run for the local government study commission. I pride myself on the ability to make data-driven decisions, say that 3 times fast, and come into any problem level-headed and ready to attack. So thank you guys. Again, my name is Wiley Phillips.
Thank you.
Hello, so my name's Connor Pollock. I'm not originally from Bozeman, my apologies. I'm from a rural town in Iowa. I left there, got a college degree in physics from Dartmouth College, moved out here then for the graduate program during COVID, don't recommend it. You might be able to tell from my age in general, I don't have a lot of government experience, but that is in part why I'm running. You see, last year we had a mayoral election, and from reading things that people were saying about it, from talking with people about it, interacting with the campaigns, you got a very distinct impression that the mayor was actually the executive authority in the town. This is not correct. And I got thinking about that because a while ago, I started Googling, well, when does the mayor actually take office? I go and I find out it's not until 2 years after they've been elected. They're just the deputy mayor until then. Then I go and I find out, actually, the mayor is not the executive authority, which, again, mentioned before. The process of researching that irritated me. It irritated me because I think that the way that people conceive of a town should be fairly close to how it actually works. I personally am running because I would like to see the town implement a commission executive form of government rather than a commission manager form. That is partially for what I just mentioned. I'd like to see the town government be brought more in line with the general conception of it. It's also because I do have some personal issues with the idea of an unelected city manager. Regardless of whether you like what they're doing or not, I think that it was Monty Python that once said, true executive authority derives from a mandate from the masses. And I think that'd be a good thing for the town to implement. That's about all I have for firm positions. I'm very open to community feedback. I'll be sticking around here to answer anything that people might have, and if I run out to go let my dog out before then, you can reach me at pollock4bozeman@gmail.com. That's Pollock for the number 4, and yeah, once again, Connor Pollock. I'll hang on to the microphone because I think we're going to be taking questions,
Yes.
but I'll hand it to the first person who wants it.
Thank you so much. So, do we have any questions? I think you guys have, again, done such we are so grateful for your attendance. Please, let's give Dan Clark a round of applause. It was amazing. Thank you so much. So I'll just say this. There are obviously some people in the room that are on different sides of the aisle. And I think it's so important to consider that possibly, like Stephanie said, we agree on a lot. And Janae said, community engagement, it's so important. That's what our website and forum is all about. We encourage spirited debate from across the aisle. We encourage everybody from all political sides to sign up, volunteer, get involved. And I will steal Barb's line. You've come this far into your Friday evening. Let's go a step further. We can all hang out there. Thank you so much for coming. Yes, one question.
What other town halls do you have planned?
We're not sure, but we, if you, what's the email address? It's info@the Sentinel, and you can go to the website. We have a community page that we'll be posting all of the future events that we'll be hosting, and we hope we see all of you and more faces at those. Thank you so much.
Thank you.